So with that, we'll move on to our first candidate in this debate, which is running for an unopposed school board seat for post 4. Her name is Cynthia Parr. Good evening, Ms. Parr.
Thank you, Michael, and I would like to begin by thanking Michael and the Democratic Committee. I'd also like to thank all of you who have come this evening to participate in the forum, and I'd like to thank everyone at home who is watching. Thought you might be interested in learning a little bit about who I am and why I want to run for school board. So let me begin by telling you that I have lived in Cobb County, School District Post 4 for the past 18 years as of this month. My husband and I moved here when my sons were 2 years old and 4 years old, so both of them went through their entire education in Cobb County School District. It was important for me to make sure that both of my sons got the most out of their education. So I spent a lot of time learning about Cobb County School District, its policies, its procedures, which led me to learn more and more about the state of Georgia Department of Education and some of the laws that they passed. And that led me, of course, to learn about federal laws. So I remember very clearly when No Child Left Behind was instituted. I remember the year that SB 10, the special needs voucher, was passed by the state of Georgia legislature. I learned a lot because I needed to about the IDEA laws, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And let me tell you, it was something of culture shock to move from Pennsylvania to Georgia because my home state of Pennsylvania has townships. And in your township, you have one high school, 1 or 2 middle schools, and however many elementary schools you need. I wasn't used to a county-wide district, so I had quite a learning curve. And because I spent so much time delving into all of the laws and policies and procedures of the district, and because I wasn't working, I sort of became the de facto go-to mom that other moms came to and asked for advice or asked, where do I find information? And I was pleased that I was able to tell them. So currently, I am a Presbyterian pastor. I have a master's degree in divinity, but prior to that, I had 2 degrees, 2 bachelor degrees. One was in journalism and mass communication, the other was in education. So I took the opportunity to take the state teachers exams, the GACE, and I became certified to teach. For 4 years, I was a substitute teacher in Cobb County, and so that way I was able to learn more about the school district from the teacher's point of view. They're telling me I need to stop, so I hope that you'll ask me some questions when you have the opportunity about my platform, because I'd like to go into that in further detail. Thank you, Michael.
Great, you're welcome. So I'd like to start with the first question, and that question is, where are the largest challenges our teachers are facing today, and what do you plan to do about it as a member of the school board?
I think the larger challenge is all of the required testing that teachers need to work with. Some of the teachers have told me that they feel sometimes that the curriculum requirements and the subsequent testing kind of impinge upon their creativity. Other teachers tell me that it's a fun challenge to try to be creative within the context of the standardized testing. So I think that's one thing we need to be sensitive to with teachers. But I also think the fact that we change things so often. No sooner does a teacher get used to a particular type of curriculum and its requirements than it gets changed by one of the government agencies that govern school districts, and then they have to totally rethink how they're going to approach the students. That doesn't necessarily give them a lot of time to get to know individual students. So I think we need to be as supportive and resourceful with teachers as we possibly can.
Great, thank you. Next question is, where do you think funds could be saved within the Cobb County School Board budget?
You know, that's a hard question to answer, Michael, because you're hurting people when you say that. There might be some ways we can save money that aren't about salaries, about things that we buy, but I think that we need most of the material items that we buy. I think that we have to look very, very carefully at salaries, if that's the major part of the budget, and make sure that we're using all of our income effectively. We also need to be careful about how we structure the various jobs within the school district, because we don't want to put people in a situation where they're dependent upon the job and then we pull the rug out from under them. So I think that takes a very sharp pencil, but thank you for raising that point.
I'll elaborate on the question a little.
Sure.
Are there any areas you feel that we could be more effective or efficient in doling out the money for the school board, or with the operations of the school boards? Anywhere where you think we could enhance the efficiency of how we're spending our money within the schools?
I have a I have a special focus on special education. And I think that because special education is in the midst of developing and always changing, we're always learning new things about different areas of special ed. I think that's something that we always need to stay ahead of the curve. We need to be listening to outside sources and resources about and integrating new avenues, new things that we've learned about special ed into the program, and then we need to staff accordingly. I also think that we need to have more consistency in that department, and so I think that's a place where we need to focus.
Great, thank you. And the last question I have for you is that obviously the Cobb County school system is a very large school district, therefore has a very large budget.
Right.
What are your specific experiences in either creating, authorizing, or managing budgets that will help you in this role?
Once upon a time, a career ago, I opened a shelter for battered women in the Pittsburgh area. So it was my responsibility to do all of the grant writing and therefore all of the funding for the shelter, as well as develop the policies and procedures in accord with the state of Pennsylvania's rules and regulations. Prior to that, of course, I mentioned that I was in radio and television advertising sales, and living off commission, you made sure that you knew exactly where the money was at all times. As a Presbyterian pastor, I am well aware of the budget in each of the churches that I have served and make sure that we run our churches as efficiently as possible. It's a nonprofit. All of my background, really, other than the advertising sales, is in nonprofit corporations and businesses and programs, and so I've always had to really watch closely how every penny is spent in each of those situations.
Great, thank you, Ms. Parr.
You're welcome.
And this is a moment where I'm going to take a little bit of privilege here, since you did mention about being a pastor.
Yes.
I did want to. There's another question we have here that I can slip in. I think will be in line with your background.
Sure.
And that question is basically, where do you stand with the great debate in the United States around the separation between church and state, and furthermore how it relates to our schools and how we teach certain elements amongst creationism or evolution as it relates to the teaching within our school?
Now, you say I have 1 minute to answer that?
You have 1 minute. Yes, ma'am.
Well, first of all, Presbyterians played a very important role in the creation of the United States of America. When you look at the Declaration of Independence, you see one clergy person who signed it. That was John Witherspoon, a Presbyterian pastor. So we were on the ground level of separation in church and state, and we continue to believe that. I think it's important that we keep our faith to ourselves. We can certainly be faithful people, but we ought not to preach or proselytize while we're in schools, because as we know, there are different ways of worshiping God, and there are different ways of practicing our faith, and no teacher ought to impose his or her faith on any student. So we need to keep that separation while we keep our personal beliefs. What was the second part of the question?
I think you've answered it.
Oh, good. You don't want me to solve the creationism problem right now?
I think we're good. If you want to address that in your closing statement, you can. You'll be allowed a closing statement. And at that point, after that, we will actually go into a statement for School Board Post 6 with Sharice Davis that our first Vice Chair, Jackie Benedict Poor, will read. So please go into your closing statement.
Okay. Well, because I didn't get a chance to share my slogan with you, I want to make sure that everyone knows that I consider myself to be pro-student, pro-teacher, pro-parent, and pro-district. I believe very strongly that all four of those entities need to work together and be in sync for our district to succeed. I believe that every student deserves the best education possible. I believe that all teachers deserve the support and resources that we can give them, that parents need to be partners with teachers, and I believe that Cobb County School District needs to be commended because we are a good school district, and anyone who's read the book by Jim Collins knows that we can go from good to great. Thank you very much.